Alright, Icarus here, and I'm going to show a more detailed leveling plan for Wave of Conviction Chieftain. Also, I've moved down here, because when I was in the upper right corner, I was occasionally covering up my character's gear when I tried to show you guys stuff, and I think this makes more sense for Poe, so now I'm in the lower right. Um, so I've added leveling trees all the way through for Wave of Conviction, starting at 30, 50, 70, 90. And I've also added more detailed notes on everything. So I just want to talk about Wave of Conviction really quick. We have full DPS of a little over 2 million, and that's accounting for a few things, so I'll show what the component parts of that are. Obviously, the main is just Wave of Conviction that we're getting about 1 million off of, but we're getting, almost another half of that again from other things, so I'll show what that is. One is Righteous Fire. If you followed my discharge build, this is quite similar. Righteous Fire is going to synergize a lot better with Wave of Conviction. Not that it was like particularly anti-synergistic with discharge, but sometimes discharge, well, there's two things. One, with discharge, sometimes Righteous Fire would steal a kill that you would really rather have gotten with discharge, because on discharge it has that chance to get an endurance charge when you stun, and you were no longer getting that if it just died to Righteous Fire. So I tended to just use it for bosses. And two, because you're discharging, you're obviously blasting out all of your endurance charges at a time. So occasionally you're in situations where you don't have very many endurance charges just for, a second or two. And in those moments, you could be slightly degenning from Righteous Fire because you get regeneration from the endurance charges. Now, the way I have it set up, you should be positive most of the time, but sometimes you wouldn't be. It works a lot better with Wave of Conviction. We can just have it up all the time. We can have it while we're mapping. There is one weakness of Wave of Conviction that Righteous Fire covers pretty well, and that's that enemies that come in at like a 45-degree angle and are very close to you sometimes aren't being caught by the wave. And if it really only happens when you're like a huge mob is rushing you, and just a couple on the angles might not die. Well, with Righteous Fire, they're just going to burn up probably before they even get to you. Um, and then the third thing is, because Wave of Conviction is normally the support spell, right? You have your spell, and then you have your support Wave of Conviction with Hex, Touch, and Flammability. Well, we don't need that anymore, so we can use Flame Surge. And Flame Surge is quite powerful because it adds Burning Ground that deals 25% of fire damage per second of the ignite affecting the enemy, and we're igniting the enemy for a fair amount of damage. Our ignite DPS is almost 700,000, and we're gonna burn the ground for 25% of that. So we're getting that for free, and we can also have Calling Strike on that because we have space for that. So all of that is adding another healthy chunk of damage. So I added a bunch of color-coded notes as far as the leveling, everything you should get. I would say this is kind of like a nice halfway point between discharge and like a normal spellcast build, in that it's not quite as painful to set up. I think that discharge doesn't fully come into its own until after the second Ascendancy. Wave of Conviction is pretty much fully up by the time you've finished. I would say by the time I got to the crystal whatever after the mine, the early stuff in Act 4, it was already looking pretty good. And by the time I got to, say, Innocence, I was basically insta-phasing him with Wave of Conviction, which was pretty cool. Definitely better damage at that stage for a spellcast Marauder than I've seen in a while. Oh yeah, one thing I wanted to note on this tree, so obviously we're taking Elemental Overload, so why do we take some Critical Strike chance nodes? And that's just to make sure the uptime on Overload is legit. So if I take these two off, we drop to 6%, which is not enough if we're casting 12 times a second, 12 times in 8 seconds. That's not enough to make it more likely than not that we have Overload up. So I take 2 just to increase the uptime of Overload, and percentage-wise, I think that's clearly worth it. Anything else to note? Well, I guess I should talk about how Wave of Conviction works if you didn't see the previous video and what we're doing with it. So we are converting 100% of Wave of Conviction to fire, and we're doing that through a combination of Nagamu Flames Advance, which does 50%, and Avatar of Fire, which does 50% of everything else. And that together, those will cover everything in Wave of Conviction over to fire. So, you know, if Wave of Conviction native property has 25% converted to fire, well, that lightning is then converted to fire again. So we're okay with Avatar of Fire and Nagamu. We're taking a lot of nodes that say things like physical damage is extra fire, because that's quite powerful for us. So like Magmatic Strikes, Divine Fury, we're taking 10% as an extra random element is also good, because even if it's not fire, half of it's being converted to fire. We're using Herald of Ash, which does... we get... Let me read it and make sure I get it right. 15% of physical damage is extra fire damage, in addition to some other useful properties for us. And then on the skill itself, we have added fire damage. Skills gain 39% of physical damage as extra fire damage. So we're getting a whole bunch of physical damage as extra fire damage, because it is natively a physical spell. Some other interesting properties of it I have written down in the notes. You can only have one active wave at a time, which means that you are mildly disincentivized to scale cast speed, because the faster you cast, the shorter those waves are going to go. They're going to have smaller and smaller area of effect. So we're looking, as we often are with Ignite, to just hit hard and move on. Like I said, I feel like it feels like a hybrid between Discharge and like a normal spellcast to me, because it's not the, the full 2-second wait for Discharge and then you blow up the screen. It's wait a little bit and blow up most of the screen. And it has both the disadvantages and advantages there. I'd say in some ways it's not quite as nice, because you can't just place yourself anywhere and hit everything. In other cases it's more nice, because say you go up against an enemy that casts Consecrated Ground or something, you're playing the Discharge Ignite build. Okay, you discharge, they play Consecrated Ground, and they're regenning that whole 2 seconds, and your Ignite's not doing anything because they got rid of it with Consecrated Ground. Well, with Wave of Conviction, it's blast, 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 and they'll still die quite quickly. So against specific enemies, it's nicer on Wave of Conviction than it is on Discharge, and then in other situations, you would have rather had the screen clear. But in some ways, they're quite similar. Wave of Conviction is a directional thing. I'll show a little bit of gameplay so you can see exactly how it works if you're not familiar with it. Funny enough, I think what it feels most similar to me is the old version of Sunder, which you may have heard people saying Revert Sunder. It kind of feels like that to me, even though it's a spell, not a melee skill, in terms of just having a large directional cone that goes in one area. It's really easy to get good gear for it. So it has an absurd number of gem tags: fire, lightning, physical, area of effect, and duration, which means if you get any gear that improves those gem levels, it improves Wave of Conviction significantly, because gem level is very good for spells. Fire is still the best, because it also improves Righteous Fire and stuff like that, but the other ones are quite good. So I'll show you, for example, I'm just running around. Let me actually take us to where I currently am. I was picking up secondary weapons so I could level some gems from Nessa. But you can see the staff I'm using right now increases physical damage and gives +2 level of all physical spell gems. And that's relevant to me because Wave of Conviction is a physical as well, and it starts as physical damage. So anything that says increased physical damage is increasing our damage, because Wave of Conviction starts physical and it gets converted to fire. Fire is even better, because fire will also affect things like Righteous Fire, although when you're leveling, physical is better, because any plus to physical will get converted, and then it will get converted to fire, whereas if you have increased to fire, it only will apply to the stuff that's already been converted. So there's, a few little minor pluses to physical that wouldn't then be getting that boost. But anyway, so actually technically physical is even better than fire before you have Righteous Fire up. But that's largely, they're close enough, it doesn't make a difference. What else was I going to make note of? Oh, Nagamu's Advance. So our DPS should actually be higher than this. This is a very pessimistic estimation, and I'll show you where I'm coming up with that. So Nagamu the Flames Advance, every 10 seconds, gain 100% of physical damage as extra fire damage for 4 seconds, and this is a big boost. So, for a set of 14 seconds, 4 of them this is up, so 2/7 of the time. And I've taken that percentage. This is irrelevant now, because I have it on Flame Surge, which is enabled on full DPS. So 2/7 is 28.57% of the time we're gaining physical damage as extra fire damage. And that's what I have it in the custom modifiers, and I have Nigamu turned off. But it's better than this, because when we put on the Ignite during Nigamu's Flame Advance, how Ignites work is the biggest one preferentially stays on the enemy. So really, because our Ignites last about 5 seconds, or maybe more like 4.5 seconds, there's a large window of time where actually Nigamu is going to be active for longer than just the time that it's actually on your character. So I'll show you what it looks like during the damage window. First I'll comment this out. So okay, this custom modifier is off. Now let's turn Nigamu on. So now that's getting 1.5 million per DPS including Ignite, and then up to 2.6 million overall. So really we're going to be a little bit closer to this number than to this number, but just want to keep it, kind of as pessimistic as possible, because that's how I like to look at the numbers. We're still going to be doing 2.2 million, even if you take a pessimistic estimation of how Nigamu Flame Advance works. Anything else to note? I don't think so. Oh, our Pantheon is our Akali, just to take reduced damage from damage over time. You should probably have that on almost any time that you're not that you're using Righteous Fire or something like that. Also have 10% less damage taken over time from the Mastery. The tree is pretty flexible. You can do, what you want with it. If you're like, hey, I need more regen because I want Righteous Fire up now, then take more regen. You can go over here and take this. It's only 1 point more, and it's more 1 point more to get there, and it's more life regeneration. So if you wanted to cut this and say, okay, I'm going to take this life node and go here, that could be a very reasonable decision. If you wanted to path through life regeneration here, that could get you there quickly. If you want to take this node, that makes a lot of sense. I probably will take this node, in fact. That's 2% per second per endurance charge, and we have a fair amount of endurance charges. It could definitely make sense to go make your War Cries instant. Then you can just do Enduring Cry on your left click if you want. Right now, the setup that I generally recommend is to have the Immortal Call on your left click, because Immortal Call spends an endurance charge, and you need to occasionally spend endurance charges for Valako Storm's Embrace, which says 15% more damage if you've lost an endurance charge in the past 8 seconds. But, if you're comfortable just switching through those buffs, you could set it up any way you like. That's just how I like to do it. Another thing you could do, you could take more block chance if you want. I tend to just take these 3 nodes. They're the most efficient block nodes on the tree. 6%, 6%, 12% is very good. So even though I'm not, going hard on the block chance, I think those 3 nodes are worth taking, and then I take those 2 for the uptime on Overload, like I said. If you wanted to go more into block chance, there's some more block nodes here. And you could take these life nodes and then path to the spell block if you wanted to increase that. I think it's a very reasonable thing to do. I don't tend to do it, but if you like block, there's a block available to you. I think, let me just check. I believe this is shield, right? Yeah, shield spell block. Yeah, so if you wanted to really go hard on the block, you could head over here. There's another 12 per 6 and 6 node with some spell damage over here, which is pretty good. I could see it being very reasonable to come over here, take these nodes, and take this, and just have a very high block chance with your staff. I may even put out another Path of Building where I show a version like that. But yeah, it can be pretty much modified to suit your needs. I think there's not a whole lot of extra damage left on the tree, I don't think. I didn't... Yeah, you'd probably... Alright, that will bear further investigation if that's something you want to do. I was very satisfied looking at this number, and I didn't really hunt for more damage once I got to this point, but if you want, you can always... well, I'll show you a little trick if you're not familiar. We can turn on Show Node Power, and we are going to look at full DPS, and you can see what the next most efficient nodes are. Just showing some options for expansion and modification. This will take a little while to load, at least on my computer. This node is not very good, by the way, because it just does spell damage, which isn't going to affect the ignite, and it's not going to affect righteous fire. So that's sort of a bait node, even though it may seem like it would be decent. You're looking for things that affect full DPS the most. Waiting for this to populate. The more I think about it, the more I think the next 10 points could definitely make sense to path through here, take these block nodes, and then go down to here and take Firewalker for some more damage. I guess it's not a huge boost, but it could make sense. Man, my computer's even slower than usual right now. Is it not going to give me... There we go. Physical nodes, I didn't even think about that. Not in this moment. I mean, I do generally will also increase. So that could potentially be worth taking. What's this? Why is this good? Oh, increased damage with skills that cost life. Okay. Well, at this point, I'm just sort of getting into, you know, what I do when I look at POBs, which isn't really what I meant for this video to be about. So I'm just going to show you a little bit of gameplay. This is going to double as Archnemesis update. This is the character I'm currently on. And I'll just go to the next area playing Wave of Conviction. Pretty much one hits most things as we go. When Flame Advance on, I absolutely melt. I pretty much insta-phased Innocence, which is not something that I recall doing before with spell damage or a spell Marauder, so that was cool. I think I'm right at the area level in terms of where I'm at. I was messing around a little bit, trying some various things, which slowed me down. Normally on a second character I'd be a bit underleveled, which I was for a while in this character. Let's see what level I am. Yeah, 46 and area level of 46. So right now I don't have Determination up yet. We just have Herald of Ash and Skitterbots, which has been fine. If you're more defensive minded, we do have enough mana available that you should be able to take Determination instead of Skitterbots, but I don't really see any reason that you would need to do that. On a 4-link here, which makes, you know, sense given where we are in the game. Sadly did not take the time to make myself a leveling 5-link or Pharma Tabula or anything, but I think the damage is more than sufficient. Alright, that's me out. I hope you're having a great Archnemesis League. Let me know if you tried this build out. I'm really enjoying it. It's something that's pretty unique, I think. I haven't played anything quite like it before. Like I said, I feel like it sort of feels about halfway between Discharge and a normal spell. But yeah, let me know. I think the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to take a look comparing Chieftain and Hierophant explosive arrow builds, because some people were asking about that. It's going to be a while before I play a Chieftain explosive arrow character, if I do that at all, because I'm interested in this Wave of Conviction guy right now. But I did see a couple people were asking for that, so maybe that will be next in the pipeline. I have enough regrets now. I may be able to respec later and show that if it's something that people have a lot of interest in. But yeah, I will catch you guys in the next one. Ikeus out.